Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's SV Lynx video. I'm feeling so much better this week and happy to be back talking with all of you. Our shipping container with the kit has reached the port of Long Beach, so I need to get to work working with our customs agent on paying fees to them and arranging for the drayage of the container to our build site. While I'm doing that, Phil's over at the build site working on moving our stationary container over there into the proper position and working on wiring for the solar panels. So let's send it over to Phil.
Good morning to everybody. It's Monday, and so we're back at the build site because tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to rain cats and dogs here. 1 to 2 inches of rain, so we have to get some work done here today. So what we're going to try to do this morning, before it gets all muddy here, is move the shipping container over a few feet to make a little bit more room down the side of the boat once we start building it, and also to get the back end of it another foot or so away from the fence, because we looked up the setback distance in this city, and the container's about a foot too close on one end. So we're going to try to move that out just so we're completely legal and don't have to do anything later. So first thing we need to do this morning is move the fences so that the Bobcat and another truck is going to come in, which we'll show you when it gets here. It should be interesting. But we do have a couple of methods of moving this. We're just going to try both and see which one works out best. The shipping container weighs 8,400 pounds, and so it's going to be quite something to try to get that thing to move. But we're going to do our best. So here we go. We have our Bobcat coming in, and then over there we have a rock crawler, and the rock crawler is going to be using its winch to help winch it over. So that's Michael DeRuiter's rock crawler and Brian DeRuiter's Bobcat. So off we go to get these unloaded. Going to have to move the back of the container over and the front of the container over, so we'll do 2 different pulls. The idea here is that we're backing the Bobcat up so that we can use that little U-shaped piece of metal at the back there and hook a pulley to it that will attach to the shipping container and over to the rock crawler's winch. And then the winch will pull. Hopefully the Bobcat will act as an anchor for the pulley. The issue we're having here is the ground is so wet from sustained rain that even with a board underneath the jack, it's just going down into the earth as we step on it, and the container's not going up. But we managed to get the board underneath of it, and so we're going to give it a try with the pulley. So Michael's going to get inside here and use the winch and try to pull it over. Unfortunately, the Bobcat is just pulling. Alright, so that didn't work. I didn't think it might, but this ground's just too wet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to see if the Bobcat can lift the container up enough to get a pipe underneath. But the problem there is that the Bobcat really can only lift about 1,500 pounds, so it may not be able to lift that shipping container, but we'll find out. So we got the metal pipe down in there, and that'll allow it to slide a little easier, so we're hoping that will help because of this wet ground. Next, now that we got the pipe on, he's just going to try to push it with the rock crawler and see what happens. Now you're on it. container has been moved in the mud. That was hard, but the rock crawler did the job. Excellent. Now we're going to try to do the same thing at the back. We're going to try to pull it, which is going to be harder because we're going to try to pull it. We'll give it a try. All right, we're going to try and do the back and pull it out now. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna go check the measurement. Just a second. All right, so what we need here is 4 feet. And there you have it, 4 feet. We're good. So, okay, there we have it. We have our 4 feet clearance for the setback. So now that we're legal, because once we start building the boat, there's no way to get a truck in here to move this container. So we want to make sure it's legal. One of our viewers made that comment, and thank you to that, because now we made sure that we'll stay legal just in case. So that concludes our moving of the shipping container with the rock crawler and the bobcat. So we're just going to load these back onto the trailers, and we'll call that a wrap. And then we're going to get to work today on the rest of the wiring for the solar panels inside of the container, and we're off to do that. All right, now we're back to working on the solar panel installation and wiring, and we brought all of our batteries here, as you can see.
Well, I shouldn't say all of them. We brought 4 of the 6, so we'll bring the other 2 over. They're still being finished up. But here's 4 of our prototypes. And all ready to rumble, so they're supplying light for us right now so that we can work on the rest of this.
All right, well, we've got the wiring further along now, and our Servo GX monitor in, and the additional box down at the bottom with the bus bars in it. What we're waiting on right now are some fuses that we have to add. So it's not quite live yet, but it's good enough for today, and we'll move on and get the rest of it done in another day. All right, well, we're done at the lot for now because the rain has started. So for the next couple days, we're going to be doing some design work on some of the boat systems. And the one I'm starting with today are the fuel tanks. Now, these are going to be built into the boat, and that gives us the opportunity to design some changes into the fuel tank to suit our needs. And one of the things that I've always wondered is why we have fuel tanks that are completely flat on the bottom, because what happens is that means that any contaminants and water and stuff is hard to suck out because it's flat across the flat bottom. And if you think about some of the fuel filters like a Raycor 900, they go down to a bowl which comes down to a point so that the water and debris collects at the bottom and you can drain it out. So why not build your fuel tank to have a similar option? So that's what we're looking at doing. So let me show you the model that I'm working on over here. We're using a product called Moto, which is something I used when I was in the game industry. And so it makes sense for me because I know the product. So that's why I'm using Moto. So here's the model of a fuel tank, and these are just representational over here. But what this one is going to be the fuel in and fuel out and that kind of stuff. Now that stays permanently in the tank, where the center one you see over here is going to be an access port that we can open up when we want to clean the tank in any way. So let's hide the top here for a second, and we'll actually hide these as well. Get back to those in a moment. And we'll take a look at the tank itself. And so what you see here is that we've divided this into 4 sections with baffles. And at the bottom, there's a hole through here, so fuel can transfer between the various sections. And at the top, there's also an opening here so that air can transfer back and forth as the tank gets lower down. And at the bottom of the tank is a sump. And I'll look at the bottom here and show you this. So this goes down and it creates a low spot, and then the sides are all angled down to that sump. So any debris and water always going to go to the lowest point since it's heavier than the fuel. And so that will collect down into this sump area. So then as the fuel moves back and forth, the debris and stuff will tend to stay in this sump. And so it naturally funnels all the stuff down to this area. And if we turn on the other portion again here, let's move the access hatch. Okay, so you can see that here the fuel lines have two intakes. One of them goes to the bottom, I'll highlight it. One of them goes to the bottom of the sump down here, and the other one, this one, only comes down to the top of the sump, so slightly above it. And the idea is this is the main pickup for fuel most of the time. And so as you're using your tank, it's pulling from here. It's not pulling down into the sump where the debris and water are collecting. However, you can switch a valve, and now you can pull from the sump if we want to run the fuel through our fuel polishing system so that we can suck out as much of this crud out of the tank and get it cleaned out of there as possible. And this will cut down on the amount of times that we have to open this access hatch and clean these out. However, we can open the access hatch, and from that access hatch, we only need one because we can actually access any one of the four areas through here to reach in and clean it out on there. And we can, of course, suck down right to the sump and get any last bit out of there as well. So that's the concept here, is that we have this tank with these sloped sides going down to this sump, and we can pull from either higher up or lower down depending on if we're using fuel and we don't want to collect debris into it to clog up our engine. Or if we want to polish it where we're not going through the engine, we can pull from the sump and pull out all the collected water and any debris that's down there. So that's our concept, and if you have any comments about that, we would love to hear them. Of course, there's two of these tanks, one on each side here, and we've looked at that in the previous video about the fuel polishing system. This is just one of them as an example. The only downside that we can see is that we would have more fuel stored if we had a perfectly square tank. And so we're losing a little bit of area here due to the slope that we could store fuel. But the fact is that we have plenty of fuel stored in these tanks. These will be the 50-gallon tanks that we require, one on each side for 100 gallons. So we have enough fuel in there, so we don't mind losing a little storage space to have it work better for keeping our fuel cleaner. So that's the idea, and it means that we'll lose a little bit of fuel storage, but we'll also have cleaner fuel and easier to use the fuel polishing system to suck out the moisture that has condensed in there or any debris that got in there from some fuel that we got from any questionable source. So it works, at least we hope it will, and we do hope that you guys will send in any comments about what is good and bad about the idea to you, and we'll look them over and see if there's anything additional that we need to do. This is just a design at this point, so it's very changeable a while still before we're going to be building those tanks. But they are built in, and we'll be making them out of our fiberglass covered foam panel, and then we'll be sealing them with a special paint inside for diesel fuel. All right, well, I was looking over the viewer questions from this week and thought I'd answer a couple of them. The first one is Craig Overend, which he says, I have not watched your fuel polishing video. However, the professionals use a high pressure pump to stir up sediment that has settled in the tank as they polish it. Usually it's the sediment that clogs pickups when you get underway in rough seas. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. However, we don't really want to go something that complex inside the tank and have a pump and wiring and all that stuff in there. So we want to keep things super simple. So that's why we designed that new tank system to drain down into the sump, to get something similar to that without having to have a pump and wiring and all that complexity inside of there. But thanks for that question. Then Robert from OC says, have you checked to see if your container, when moved closer to the fence, will not violate the setback rules for this city? As you saw earlier in the video, Robert, we took your comment into consideration and actually did quite a bit of work to make sure that that is not a problem. So thank you again for making that comment, because it's something that we hadn't checked. And we looked up the city regulations and now took care of it. And then I said, Dio asked, just curious why an individual MPPT for each panel. I would expect you would be able to just have 2 to 3 zones to handle shading issues. It would be way less wiring. I think it would be more efficient with a higher voltage. Well, the voltage we handled by going with the 86 volt panel, so that really isn't an issue. We don't have to put ours in series to get up to a high enough voltage for the MPPTs. And the reason for all those MPPTs is simply that even if you put them in zones with a sailboat and all that rigging up there and boom and mast, individual panels in each of those zones you mentioned would still possibly get shaded, and that would bring down the level of charge from all of the panels. So having individual MPPTs gives us the highest amount of solar power that we can get out of our panels due to all the various shadings that'll happen. Just an example picture of shading on the panels. You'll notice like the 5 panels on the stern, one of them is getting hit by the boom, and that would have, if those were a group, that would affect all the other panels. So that's why 1 MPPT per panel. Okay, well, that should be it for this week of answering questions. And we love all the comments people send in. Some of them are incredibly helpful, like Robert's from last week, and others. So we read all of them and try to respond to all of them. And we do take what you guys say into consideration, whether we accept your suggestions or not. We at least consider everything that people say. So please keep commenting. We really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to get the Admiral and we'll go for the wrap up on this video.
Okay, now that we've arranged everything with the customs agent, the shipping container with the kit in it should arrive to our build site approximately March 21st. So we're very happy about that. And we will show you everything that comes in that container as we unload it onto the lot.
And sorry about the cat coming in. That's our 4th actor in the video. So yeah, the kit's arriving, and before that, we're going to have my retirement party and also my birthday, which is one and the same, on my birthday on the 18th. And then the cat's about to get in the camera again. And then this party is also our kickoff the build of the boat party. So that's going to be very interesting, and we're going to be drafting a whole bunch of our crew to come help unload all that stuff, probably again on the 21st that Marianne just mentioned. And we'll get that unloaded. We'll show you all of what comes in that kit and how we arrange it into the other container and where we're storing what. So we'll get to all that in our next video. Very exciting time with that shipping container arriving. Well, we just got some really big news. Not only is our shipping container in Long Beach and already unloaded, but it immediately passed through customs. And they're delivering our container tomorrow. So that was a big shock to us, since we thought it would take a week or 2 before we would get it. So we've had to scramble and get our crew together to have enough people to unload that whole container. So we managed to get at least 15 of the crew to show up tomorrow with short notice and get off work to help us unload that whole container. So we'll have the complete unloading of our shipping container and kit on our next video. So we thought we would just tell you, but let me show you how it's loaded into the container. So here you can see that they've wrapped the various cutout pieces of our kit together in logical sections. So like all the furniture is going to be put together. And then here you'll see that there are some full panels. You can see them stacked in the back there. Those are for things like strip planking of the hulls that we actually have to cut. Most of the boat is cut, but there are some things that we need to cut out, and those do come in the full 28-foot by 9-foot panels. And then down below there, you'll see things like our mast and boom all wrapped up, ready to go into the boat. These are the various forms that we build, things like the bridge deck or the hulls or the cabin roof. So those are all the forms. And here we have various things like fiberglass rolls and stuff, thickening compounds, all those kinds of different things. And those are in the background on that pallet. In the foreground, those are going to be the sails all wrapped up. And those are come on pallets. And here we have a couple of our refrigerators and some more materials that we have all on another pallet. And here's a bunch of the different groups of panels that will be inside the container. Another picture of the different groupings of our pre-cut panels. That's the shipping container that's coming, which is exactly the same size container as the one we have on the lot that we'll be transferring everything into. And here they are loading various cut panel sections into the container. That's our shipping container and what's coming, and it's coming quickly. That means tomorrow, so we have very little time to get ready. We got word and they wanted to deliver it the same day, so we managed to get them to deliver it tomorrow, which will be Friday the 17th of March. And then our party is on the 18th, and then it's time to get started building the boat. So we'll see you next week for the video on that. That's it for this week, but we would like to thank our patrons for their support as always. And for all of you who watch, we do appreciate you very, very much, because even though we don't make tons of money off of YouTube, it does help us with all the little things. So we do appreciate you.
Yes. And don't forget to like and subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
And we will see you next week, where we'll unload the shipping container, we hope, and have our big party. So see you then.
Bye.
Bye.